Oh, hello there, Bethany. How are you doing this morning?
I am doing very well. It's nice to see you under the water today.
It's nice to hear you above the water today and to be connected to you during this program. For all those of us watching live online, for the folks in the visitor center, and the several people we have topside on Anacapa Landing Cove, welcome to Channel Islands National Park. And it's a pretty special way to welcome people to the park because even though I'm 25 feet underwater, 20 miles offshore, inside of a biodiverse kelp forest all around me, I'm still connected to you on the mainland because you can see and hear me and I can hear you. And to test that connection, we can all give a big thank you to the volunteer divers who are helping us run this program today, including Andrea, our camera operator. So Bethany, do you want to help me test how connected we are during this program by having everyone shout, "Thank you, Andrea," from the visitor center?
Absolutely. All right, on the count of three. One, two, three.
And Andrea's giving you her little applause there right now. And through Channel Islands Live, which is a partnership between the National Park Service and Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary, we're able to form these connections not just to the visitor center, but across the world. Everyone can watch live online. Which is important because the Channel Islands attract people from all over the world to come visit and take a look at these incredibly diverse kelp forest ecosystems and the islands themselves. I wonder, Bethany, if we could hear from the audience today where they might have come from in order to visit Channel Islands National Park.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm from Florida.
Oh, wow, all the way from Florida.
And
Came
we
a
have some
long
other
way.
visitors.
I'm from Ventura.
And we have a local in town as well. That's awesome. So some folks came across the entire country, while others have the islands in their backyard. Whether you grew up near Channel Islands National Park or not, it's still an incredible place to visit. So Bethany, I'm wondering, especially for our Florida visitor, if we could share why we chose to visit the National Park and the Visitor Center today. What attracted you to this place?
I've been here before and hiked on one of the Channel Islands, so I thought I'd come back.
Awesome. Well, welcome back. Yeah. Hiking across the terrestrial or the land part of the national park is a great way to experience this place. But Channel Islands National Park is pretty unique in that half of our park is underwater. So right now, as I'm swimming in this kelp forest, I'm still within the park boundary. And even though you might not even be able to see us if you were hiking on the top of the island, we're still connected to all of the ecosystem and the islands above us and to people all over the world. So we're going to explore some of those connections today during this program. And I think the most obvious, the most salient thing for us to explore in this kelp forest is the kelp itself. Because when we think of a forest on land, we might consider trees or deer or other animals as species you might normally encounter. But here we're in an underwater forest that's made of algae. Kelp photosynthesize as algae, kind of like plants, but they're actually a type of seaweed. And some of us, especially those from Ventura, might have seen bits of kelp or seaweed washed up on the shore. And I wonder, Bethany, if our visitors, how about our locals this time, can share, what's the first thing that comes to mind when they think of seaweed? What words pop into their head?
Yes, our answer is
Green.
Green, yeah. That's a great one. What about somebody else in the audience? What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of seaweed or algae?
yes, we have an answer, and the answer is super tasty.
Tasty, yes. Yeah, algae, especially giant kelp, is green and tasty for sure. That's one way that humans are connected to the kelp forest. Algae, like giant kelp, can be dried out and eaten as seaweed, which is a delicacy, or you might have had it if you've ever had a roll of sushi before as the wrapping. So humans are connected to the kelp forest because we eat the kelp, but we're also connected to the kelp for the other reason that was mentioned, because it's green. Because kelp photosynthesize. They take in sunlight and nutrients from the water, and they release oxygen. So when they take in that carbon dioxide and sunlight, they're storing that carbon within themselves. And they're also spreading oxygen out into the ocean, into our atmosphere, which is a really important way that we're connected to the kelp. Because kelp and other marine algae produce half of the oxygen in the Earth's oceans and in our atmosphere. So every time we take a breath, we have kelp and its tiny single-celled friends to thank for the breath that we take. So I wonder, Bethany, if we could explore that connection too, and together say thanks for the help, kelp, after taking a deep breath.
Yes, all right. We're going to take a deep breath in 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. And what are the reasons that we have such vibrant kelp forests in our park? Has to do with those other algae that we see around us. Because Channel Islands National Park sits in Southern California, just off the coast. And there's some really special ocean features that make it such a biodiverse ecosystem, or an ecosystem so full of life. Winds coming down the coast push a lot of that near-shore water, surface level, out into the ocean, farther into sea. And cold, nutrient water from much lower in the ocean upwells. It comes up from the deep, bringing all that nutrients with it, allowing lots of plankton, or tiny little organisms, to survive and thrive in this atmosphere. You might not be able to see them, but all around me, as a sea lion says hello to us off camera, all around me, there are billions of tiny little planktonic animals and algae writhing around me, which support the ecosystem that this sea lion behind me lives in. It's actually being a little bit shy and hiding behind one of the fronds of kelp. But as you can see it pass behind me now, all of the tiny little photosynthetic algae and the tiny little animal algae, the phytoplankton and the zooplankton, support an ecosystem that allows giant creatures like sea lions and whales and others to survive. And it also allows many deeper species during these upwelling events to come in a little bit closer. And we can take a look at one of them here. So to test that connection too, between deeper open ocean environments and the coast through that upwelling, we have a very special guest on camera right now. This is the first time we featured this animal on the Channel Islands Live program. Right here, we've got what looks like kind of a little translucent blob. That's a salp, or a type of tunicate, an animal that lives in the ocean. Salps will often find them during upwelling periods, making their way in closer to shore. But they're planktonic and they live out in the open ocean. As this one is deciding to float a little bit off screen. You can find dozens of salps connected to each other. Sometimes they're colonial, and sometimes they go off on their own, like this salp is doing today. And so earlier today, this deeper ocean species that we normally see out way far from the islands came on in and feeds off of those tiny little algae around us. So we're connected to our ocean in ways that are microscopic, in ways, as we got another visitor behind me, that are really tall too. All around us here, I'm surrounded by that giant kelp, which can grow to over 100 feet long. and use these blades that look kind of like leaves in order to photosynthesize and take in carbon dioxide and release that oxygen. We're connected to the kelp because it helps us breathe. We're connected to our oceans and those cycles that bring animals like the salp closer to us. But over 1,000 different other species of animals are also connected to kelp because kelp is a foundation species. It forms the structure, the food, and the home for many other species of animal to survive and to thrive. So Andrea is going to take us on a little journey through the kelp forest to another species that lives here as we follow this sheephead, a type of fish found in the kelp forest. It's just passing through. We're swimming through its living room. It's probably wondering what all of these intruders are doing in its home. Ranger Bethany, while we're heading over to meet a new friend here in the kelp forest, I wonder, does our audience have any questions about the salp or about the kelp all around us?
Looking for a question. We have a question, and the question is,
What are all those white dots on the kelp?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the question is, what are the white dots on the kelp? So there are lots of tiny little marine species that like to encrust or grow along the kelp. And so these are encrusting bryozoans, which is a very fancy term for a tiny little animal that will grow along the blades of the kelp. So kelp provides a home and a habitat, and some creatures literally live on the kelp too. They're that closely connected to them. Another species that is deeply connected to the kelp forest that Andrea is going to take a look at here are abalone, or a type of marine snail. Abalone are pretty cryptic, which means they're hard to see. But I've got an empty shell of an abalone right here that you can take a look at. And then we'll point to the real thing on the rock. So this is an empty shell, and we've got a real live pink abalone right in front of us that I'm outlining here with my hand. Abalone are connected to the kelp forest too. They eat the kelp when it breaks off and drifts near them. They're kind of like the garbage disposal of the kelp forest in some ways. When little bits of kelp break off, they start munching on them. And even though they can move really fast, if they're in a really premier spot here in Anacapa Landing Cove or in the ocean, they can stay on the same rock potentially for years at a time. Abalone are connected to the kelp because it's their home and it's their food. But they're also connected to us. Humans have been connected to the abalone since time immemorial. Abalone were and are an important food source for humans. Very culturally significant animal for the Chumash people. Right now, we're diving within Channel Islands National Park. The Channel Islands are the homeland and traditional territory of the Chumash people. In fact, when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower during the last ice age, where we're diving underwater with tanks and masks right now was actually above the water. And this was all a part of the islands themselves. So humans have been connected to the abalone since the area we're diving was actually on land. Abalone can be eaten. Also, their shells were used as bowls. But they rely on healthy kelp forests to ensure that we have healthy populations of abalone. Ranger Bethany, I wonder, do we have any questions or any stories from our audience? Has anyone ever actually eaten abalone before?
looking for a question. I don't think we have any questions at the moment.
No worries. Topside. For the
Oh, I
folks who are on the
apologize.
landing cove. Do we have any thoughts or ideas while we head back to our new spot? Any questions about abalone or the ocean around us?
There are very few who have ever eaten abalone, and most of them are much older.
Yeah. So most folks in California today, as Andrea takes us back into the heart of the kelp forest, abalone used to have commercial fisheries across California. There are 7 different species of abalone. But because the kelp forests across much of our state have been declining, those fisheries were closed to help the abalone return to their former populations. Because humans are connected to the kelp forest in many ways. And we're about to explore one of those as volunteer Taylor comes on camera here. Thank you, Taylor. One of the most impactful ways that we're connected to the kelp forest are by how humans interact with these 2 species right here. In my right hand, I have a purple urchin, and in my left hand, I have a red urchin. And urchins also graze on kelp. They spend much of their day in a healthy kelp forest, hiding in little cracks and crevices in the rocks, and then scampering out to nibble on little bits of drift kelp before hiding again. And that's because in healthy kelp forests, there are predators in the ecosystem, like that sheephead fish that we saw earlier. And those animals are able to eat the urchins and keep their populations in check, so there aren't too many urchins that graze on all of the kelp. Here in Anacapa Landing Cove, we're in a marine reserve. That means a part of the ocean where we've decided and made laws that we can't take any animals out with us. So predators of urchins like sheephead and lobster can grow big and strong and abundant within the cove. So we have healthy populations of kelp. But if we were to go to the backside of Anacapa Island, right around the corner, there are areas with almost no kelp, where urchins have mowed down much of the kelp forest, because we have an impact on the kelp forest ecosystem. When we eat all of the predators, like fish-out, spiny lobster, or sheephead, urchins can become too abundant, even though they're a native species. There can be too many of them, and they can mow through the kelp forest and leave behind empty areas covered in rocks and urchins, which we call barrens. So humans are connected to the kelp forest, and we impact the kelp too, just like the kelp impacts our lives through the oxygen it creates. And one way that humans can have a positive impact on the ecosystem around them is how we interact with some of those predator species. So we swap out with Taylor here. I've got one of the main predators of urchins at the islands in my hands here. This is the molt, or the shell, of a California spiny lobster. Lobsters are one of the types of animals that people like to fish in the park. And when we're able to establish marine reserves, the lobsters can grow larger and they have a place of refuge so they can become more abundant and grow their population so that they can keep those urchin populations in check. So by creating reserves and by following the laws of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, we're able to keep the populations of lobsters healthy within reserves and bring balance to the kelp forest ecosystem. These are always really fun to find here on the seafloor. Sometimes when it's right in the middle of molting season, you'll swim through Anacapa Landing Cove And there can be dozens of these spooky shells of what were lobsters. Because we're in a reserve and these lobsters are protected, they can grow really large. And when they do that, they have to get rid of their former external skeleton and move into a new one. So we'll find these little molts all over the place, which is a sign that the ecosystem is healthy. And there's many lobsters in the area. So that's one really important way that we're connected to the kelp forest. We're also connected to the kelp in many other ways. Our impacts as people make their way into these marine ecosystems, whether we've been scuba diving in them or not. So Ranger Bethany, or for our topside crew here on the island, I wonder, what are some ways that we impact the kelp? How can we help the kelp, or what do we do that can impact our marine ecosystems?
We're thinking of responses.
We have a thought here at the Visitor Center. The question is?
My question is, what is the temperature of the water that's down at the bottom, top, and is the water temperature changed over the last couple decades?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it really speaks to one of the ways that humans do have a connection to our oceans. So the temperature right now is probably in the mid-60s here in Anacapa Landing Cove. If you went a little deeper, it would probably get a little bit colder. But the temperature of our oceans has been changing over the decades. We've already seen warming of several degrees Fahrenheit over the last century and a half, especially in our coastal ocean ecosystems. When we release more carbon into the atmosphere traps more heat like a blanket, leading to increased warming, not just of the air around us and our land-based ecosystems, but here in the ocean too. So we've been seeing temperatures increase, and we've been seeing even some species that are usually found further south making their way up north as the climate changes. Ranger Bethany, do we have any other questions from our audience about any of the animals we've seen today, or other ways that we might be connected to the kelp?
We're looking, thinking. Yeah, we have one more. The question is?
Are there any turtles over there?
That's another good question. The answer is yes, but very rarely. So a couple of different species of sea turtle do pass through Channel Islands National Park. Green sea turtles are often one of the more common ones when we do see them. Catalina Island actually has a couple of spots where you can pretty consistently see green turtles in the backside of the island. But for the most part, we're a little bit too cold here on the northern Channel Islands for large populations of sea turtles. So we'll see them pass through occasionally.
We do have a question here topside on Anacapa. The question is,
How many fish species are there, and are there any like rare / endangered ones?
Yeah, there's a number of different either rare or endangered species we see here. There are many species of fish that can be found in the kelp forest. One of the largest ones that we see is also one of the rarest, called a giant sea bass. Giant sea bass are a species that was heavily fished by humans throughout the 20th century. They can grow to be really big, like 500 pounds big. It's like 3 of me fit into one fish. But because there was so much pressure on them from human fishing and activity, they became threatened. So the state of California put in protections outlawing the intentional take of sea bass, and their populations are starting to slowly recover. So one of the rarer species we see here is also one of our largest. And we're pretty connected to their populations too. Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us and being connected to us during this program here at Inaccessible Landing Cove. Any final thoughts from the Visitor Center, Bethany, before we sign off from underwater?
Yes, we have one thought here.
Ranger Rouvain, this is John Todd with Western National Parks Association. Just want to say congratulations on relaunching this program. It's really exciting to see this coming back, and what a dynamic way of keeping people connected to Channel Islands National Park. So thanks for putting yourself underwater and giving us a great presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. The Channel Islands Live program went offline for just about 5 years, from early 2020 until now. And we're only able to be broadcasting with you today because so many people are donating their time and energy to the program. We've got volunteers running our camera. You've seen Taylor come on screen a few times. Oh, he's got one more animal to show us, actually, that we're going to take a look at here. But because of the time and effort of folks like Taylor, we're able to bring this program to you and show you all of the wonderful creatures of the ocean, like this nudibranch or sea slug called a Spanish shawl. Another denizen of the kelp forest. Spanish shawls are these brightly colored species of sea slug that crawl their way around the ocean floor, eating sponges and bryozoans. So the kelp is a home for them too, just like it's a home for this Channel Islands Live program. So we appreciate those kind words. And hopefully ourselves, these sea slugs, and all the animals will be able to continue this program for many years into the future.
I don't think we have any more questions or thoughts from the Visitor Center. Thank you for your time, Ranger Rouvain and the team out there.
Take care. Best wishes to all of you.